Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice podcast, your inside connection to outdoor legislation. From the Beltway to policy happening your way, we're covering it all. I'm your host, Fred Bird. Join us as we explore public land access, wildlife and fisheries management, Second Amendment rights, the triumphs that shape our nation, the sports we all love, and the stories that fuel our passion for the great outdoors. This is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. That's right, this is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. I am your host, Fred Bird. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get to this week's guest, let us check in on the stories happening across the nation with this week's TSV Roundup. That's right, this is the TSV Roundup. This week brought to you by Hands Off the Cats, Kids Fishing for a Lifetime, thank you to our governors in the Southeast, and a temporary but all-important victory in Pennsylvania, the Keystone State. Let's get into it. Folks, if you've been plugged in, you're well aware of what's happening in Colorado with a ballot initiative that would ban all mountain lion and bobcat hunting. So on the 22nd of September, anti-hunting advocates filed a proposed ballot measure in Colorado that seeks to ban all hunting and trapping of mountain lions, bobcats, and federally protected Canada lynx. This ballot initiative comes on the heels of the Colorado legislator soundly defeating Senate Bill 22031, which also aimed to restrict predator management, circumvent the authority Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and erode the North American model of wildlife conservation. The Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation strongly opposed these efforts during the 2023 legislative session and will be working with national and in-state partners to oppose this initiative should it qualify for the 2024 ballot. Folks, this is a terrible idea. As we see across much of the West, and even in the East, I can speak, again, as a New Hampshire resident, what's happened with our bobcat populations. These charismatic critters get that special treatment, right? And so we kind of throw conservation management out the window. We look at our state agencies and the professionals that work for those state agencies, and we say, well, good science, but we're going to go another way with it. No, we gotta trust these folks, and you can't give special accommodation because you find one critter over another more pleasant to look at, more aesthetically pleasing. That's not a balance. That's not the right approach. Truthfully, if we took that stance, I don't think a whole lot of stuff would be harvested, would be managed, less the wild turkey, because I don't know too many people that find that, other than me and then some of my turkey nut friends, super attractive and cute and cuddly. The best thing we can do is educate, advocate, and if you're in Colorado, certainly be involved in the process. This is damaging. I mean, what else can you say here? The use of these ballot initiatives to restrict or ban hunting, like we said, it circumvents the legislative and regulatory process that allows for the input by professionals, opportunities, provisions, and considerations of broader impacts within the state. What more can you say? This is, like I said in the onset, this is a terrible idea. So, hands off the cats, as we said. Happier stuff. In Arkansas, the legislature passed a bill to create a discounted resident youth lifetime combo license during the 2023 legislative session. A limited number are officially for sale across the natural state. The discounted license will provide parents and legal guardians the opportunity to invest in their child's future as a sportsman or sportwoman. The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission weighs a proposal to increase the availability of this license. Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation celebrates the availability and potential to increase hunter and angler recruitment in the next generation. What a great opportunity for young people. We talk about R3, right? The recruiting, the retaining, and the reactivating. Well, here's your recruitment right here. Here's a great opportunity, but it's at the retaining. And as we often talk about, certain age demos that we lose folks that participate in the outdoor pursuits. And it is very often once they got to start paying for it on their own when they leave the nest. I mean, I think certainly most places where, a young person, 16 or above, they got to start buying in a license. They're no longer considered a youth, or wherever a youth is considered in your state. And they have to have a license. Mom and dad or whoever's in charge of the particular kid typically foot that bill until they leave the house. And that's where we start losing these folks. So, I mean, and we've already talked about it on this program and in prior TSV articles, the college, the policy on college in-state fees for non-residents. So that policy is so important because that age demo, that 18 to mid-20s, where we lose folks, at least here in Arkansas with some of these available opportunities to have a lifetime license, at least that cost is taken care of up front. So these young people, as they go through their life, as they're getting through college or whatever it is where we typically lose them in those specific age demos, Arkansas is solving for that. And again, as I mentioned, great policy initiative in your state, if you don't have it, is to take care of the non-resident college students that spend so much of their time in your state and hooking them up with the resident license fee. They're already there. They're spending their time. They're spending their money in your community. And it helps bridge that gap. Anyway, we've talked about it. We can probably hit on that at another time, but good on Arkansas here for creating that opportunity. Great support coming out of the Southeast. Shout outs. The 12 Southeastern states from which governors signed National Hunting and Fishing Day proclamations included Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. That's awesome. We had 39 governors sign state proclamations recognizing National Hunting and Fishing Day. It was fantastic. Would love to have a full participation of 50, and certainly we here at Congressional Sportsmen Foundation are working towards that. So 2024 challenge has been laid down. If you were a non-signing governor, you hear this, you're missing out. We'd love to have you. So let's see if we can get over the 40, maybe 45 next year, and then on to all 50. Would love to have you. Speaking from experience, people look up here in the Northeast, oh, there's no way you're going to get some of those up there. 5 out of the 6 states here in New England, governors stepped up in spots some people would look at and say, no, there's no way. And definitely so. They recognize it. So here, another opportunity to advocate, to educate, and let the governors of these other 11 states know what we do as a community, the financial impacts of our community, and the burden we put on our shoulders to fund conservation in our state agencies. That's a big deal. And we're happy to have these 12 governors recognize that. So thank you so much. And finally, on this TSV roundup, CSF celebrates a temporary victory in protecting $190 million in conservation funding in Pennsylvania. However, the fight is not over. So here you had House Bill 1300. This was a state appropriations bill. And in this monster bill, there was, the lamest way to put this is that they were going to defer funds to pay for something else. And in doing so, it was going to put Pennsylvania in a bad spot for those PR dollars. So getting into it here, House Bill 1300, the appropriations bill, was amended by the Senate to include the transfer of $150 million derived from gas and oil leases on state game lands purchased with the revenue derived from license sales and wildlife restoration funds from the Game Commission Fund to the Clean Streams Fund. This amended version of the bill was introduced and passed by the Senate on the 30th of August. So again, you're taking the money away from one thing to fund the Clean Streams Fund. Pennsylvania Game Commission received $41 million in federal funding in FY23 from PR dollars, the Pittman Robinson Wildlife Restoration Grant Fund program. Passage and enactment The previously written House Bill 1300 would likely declare Pennsylvania ineligible to receive future PR dollars. House Bill 1300 was amended in the House Rules Committee on the 4th of October to remove the transfer of $150 million from the game fund. The newly amended version is headed to the Senate Rules and Executive Nominations Committee for concurrence. A hearing has not yet been scheduled as of the writing of this article. Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation took a leadership role in this. It was in contact with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Governor Shapiro's office, the Pennsylvania Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, in addition to signing on to a joint letter of opposition with our conservation organizations and in the state, and submitted a letter to the Senate Rules and Executive Nomination Committee urging concurrence of removing the transfer of game funds. So that happened. That was great. And super job there by our boots on the ground and partnering with our partners in state and everyone rallying to that cause and recognizing in those many pages of that bill the consequences of what could have happened. So way to rally and this TSV roundup on a high note. So there you go. Again, you can always subscribe and get these Mondays, most Monday nights around 5 o'clock Eastern. Sometimes if we have an event week, they're pushed back a day. Simply, you guys can go to congressionalsportsman.org, or you can just Google Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, the Sportsman's Voice, and it'll bring you right to there. You can fill in your basic information, who you are, and where you want that weekly newsletter to be dumped into, whatever email you choose. Super easy, costs you nothing, and invaluable information. That's it for this week's TSV Roundup. We are going to get into the show here. We're very fortunate and lucky to sit down and have an opportunity to sit down with the chairman of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation Board, Mr. Richard Childress. He invited us into his RC racing headquarters. Got to spend a bit of time with him in his office. Beautiful. It's like a natural history museum right in his office, and a great many memories of hunting pursuits gone by. Let's get into it. Queuing up, Mr. Richard Childress. Let's go. All right, we are joined today by the chairman of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation Board, Mr. Richard Childress. Thank you so much for having us in your office, sir.
Thank you, Fred. If you look around here, I think you'll see a lot of conservation wildlife at its best right here.
Yeah, I would agree. And we were remarking off air that it complements the conversation. This is wonderful.
Well, thank you. I've been very fortunate and blessed to be able to start hunting and fishing as a young kid. And I remember the first, rabbit hunting, squirrel hunting, just as a young kid, and taught a lot about safety, and hunting was the first two things I was taught. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to teach it to my grandchildren. A lot of people that I've been with, first-time hunters, we take veterans hunting. Just so many things like that I enjoy about the great outdoors today. God's blessed us with a beautiful surrounding, and to have the great wildlife, and for us, the conservationists, your hunters, your anglers, men and women, are our greatest conservationists.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So with that, between racing, running successful businesses, your family, you give back to the sporting community and conservation community so generously. What is it about the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation that commands your passion and support as chairman of the board?
Well, I've been involved now probably a little over 20 years. We have the Wine, Wheels, and Wildlife. This year, it will be our 19th year. I think looking at my grandchildren, I got great-grandchildren now, all the young people in America that's going to have to carry on the tradition of hunting and fishing, I want to leave a mark and try to leave everything better than when I was a kid. And getting out there, they'll never see it like it was many, many years ago. But it's up to us to help protect it for our future generations to enjoy the great outdoors that we have today. And that's my passion. And the Congressional Sport, over the past 5 years, we've won over 1,000 bills, statewide, federal, So those are things that would have been taken away if we had not had the Congressional Sportsmen Foundation. They're our voice when it comes to Washington.
Yeah, I would agree as one of the boots on the ground in the New England area that um, personally my professional experience has taken me through a number of different organizations and being here on this team, seeing the work that's done and a lot of it behind closed doors and behind the scenes. It's really leaving a mark, this organization. And like you just said, protecting the future and getting those wins and advising and educating policymakers. Sometimes they do things they just don't understand. And then we can stand in and having leadership like yourself to help work with these folks and maybe this is why this doesn't work here. And this is how this affects us down the line, you know?
Yes, I think that, there's so many great organizations that many of them are working to have policies also they work with. But Congressional Sportsman Foundation is usually out right there working with any of their challenges. They're working together with every organization, but they are the number one voice in Washington when it comes, and in our states, when it comes to policy and protecting. And I cannot believe today some of the things that some of the people are out there trying to change in this world when it comes to hunting, fishing, boating, shooting, any of that. So it's a huge challenge, worse today than it's ever been in my life. And to have the Congressional Sportsman Foundation there standing by every time something comes up like this, that's a big mark.
I would agree. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Being here where we are today, RC Racing headquarters is a fantastic campus, and I can't help but wonder your years of experience in the racing world. What is it about the NASCAR fan base?
If you look back, it's so many everyday fans out there, that work in your mills or steel mills or work wherever. And the same deal with hunters and anglers is they're the same type of fan base that we have in NASCAR. It's the same type. We just love this country. I think that's the number one thing with NASCAR fans and anglers and hunters and conservationists is we love this great country we live in called America.
Yeah, certainly, when you watch Sunday racing, you can see that coming through loud and clear, the patriotism and the well-attended races. There's so many people in that oval there that are, then they spend the whole week there, the community that is there. It often, I live in New Hampshire, so I think about Loudon, and you go through, starting, I think, on Tuesday when they start coming in and people are camping out all week, and it kind of reminds you of a hunt camp.
Oh, it does. And it's, you'll go around at night and you'll see campfires and the fans sitting around, the camaraderie. But
7-Eleven.
Everyone sitting around, and that's a huge thing about hunting and fishing and being in the great outdoors is spending time with your friends and family.
Agree. As a leader, you have lots of leadership roles you have over your entire career, and here you are. What is one of the biggest challenges you've faced in any of the positions you've held or currently hold?
Each one has its own challenges. I don't ever like to use the words problem. Problems are hard to fix. Challenges, you got a better opportunity to get in front of them and work on them. And I've just, I can't speak for each one of them because every one of them's different. I think the challenge today that we have with the Congressional Sportsman Foundation is letting our anglers and hunters and shooters understand really what CSF's about. You walk into a gun store and you walk around and ask, do you know what the CSF is, Congressional Sportsman Foundation? Nobody knows. I'll tell you a quick story. I was driving back I have some land here close. I'd been over that morning, took some folks hunting, and I seen these hunters, two of them coming out on a Sunday morning. It was Sunday morning, and they're orange, and I slowed and I just looked over at them and I thought, I just wonder if those two hunters that just coming out of the woods understand why they're capable or able to hunt today on Sunday in North Carolina. And it's because of the Congressional Sportsman Foundation. and a lot of other people was involved. But at the end of the day, I was there. So many people with the Congressional Sportsman Foundation was there in Raleigh helping get the bill passed for Sunday hunting. And very few people know what they do. They just enjoy it. All the benefits that's been put out there by the Congressional Sportsman. So if it's one thing I want to be able to do in my chairmanship and even beyond that, is let everyone understand the great things that's going on with the Congressional Sportsman Foundation and how they touch so many people's lives that are not even anglers or hunters. And that's waterways and so many things and trails and stuff that Congressional's there fighting for in Washington and in the states.
It's a great point, and if I don't mind, would you expound on that a little bit? I mean, we recently had a conversation about some legislation out in California where the governor signed into law a bill establishing another excise tax, and he called it a sin tax on firearms and ammunition. So where some people, the ones you just pointed out, the people that aren't out there angling, hunting, or recreational shooting don't understand how the funding mechanism comes about. Talk a little bit more about that and the importance of the 80% out there who aren't participating and why that's important.
Yes, the Pittman-Robertson Act was put in effect in the 30s, and that's an excise tax on all your firearms, shooting, anything like that to do with the outdoors. That's an excise tax that billions of dollars has been put back in through your states. Each year, each state gets a certain amount of that money that's raised, and it goes to the fish and wildlife. And that's a big deal. And it was in the 50s, the Dingell-Johnson Act came in, and now there's an excise tax on your fishing and boating and stuff like that. And all that money goes back in to help support the outdoors for someone fishing or hunting or whatever it is. So that's the big two benefits that are the conservation is I'd said it earlier, is your men and women who are hunters, anglers, and recreational shooters.
We were having a conversation this morning with some colleagues, and this very topic came up, and comparing notes across the country and things that we're dealing with. And it often comes up about, the folks we're talking about that aren't out there doing what we do. And, it needs to be said again, the excise tax between PR dollars and Dingell-Johnson, we asked for that as a community. That wasn't something the state or the federal government said, we're going to put this on you. The whole conservation community said, this is a good thing, we can pay this. And it's interesting when perhaps it's brought up, the fella out there on a kayak or a stand-up paddleboard or bird watching, say, okay, can you contribute to this? And maybe there's something you feel magnanimous about, whatever percentage is, whatever you think, the $2 a year to watch birds, or because the stand-up paddleboarder is using the same waterways we are as we're fishing. They may not be pulling fish out, but they are enjoying the clean water, swimming in it, recreating all day. It's really important that they have an understanding of that. And for me, I would like to see more buy-in from those folks using and recreating out there.
I would too, and I think at some point we will get more buy-in from it. It's just going to take some time to get them to understand what the Congressional Sportsman Foundation does. It opens those waterways. A lot of times there's so much of this. There's a bill being put in now to keep us from, that's going to really affect the economics of our commercial fishermen. If you go from Florida, I think it is, to New Hampshire, all the way up the East Coast, there's a law in there now called the White Whales Act, and they're trying to fix it where you can't run over 10 knots for 100 miles out. Can you imagine wanting to go, if your boat's over 35 feet, can you imagine that happening, how the economic impact and how it's going to affect so many people? Now in the Gulf side, they're trying to do the same thing to every boat. So if you got a bass boat or anything, they're trying to put it where you can't run over 10 knots. And it's insane to do what they're doing. And that's one of the great things that the Congressional will be in here fighting. Those are two big bills that we're looking hard at right now.
Yeah, and I guess specifically since you brought them up, do you think it's a matter of advocacy and education on that part? It seems so often specific pieces of legislation come up that are perhaps well-intended, but again, they don't see the depth of that well-intended legislation they're putting forth. And then when we act and we put our representatives in their offices or in front of them and they have these conversations, you go a couple levels deep. Do you think that's where we're at with most of these, or some of this, like the one we're talking about right now with the fishermen? Is it just a matter of controlling that industry?
Well, I think that they have other things in sight in the back of their mind. But at the end of the day, any of these things that come up like this one, I'm just using one for example, there's no science behind it that says that it should be put in as a law. Number one, I'm giving you my opinion. I think there has to be science behind a lot of this stuff that's put in there that will make it clear that this isn't the reason we're doing it. The reason they're doing it, if I'm just using numbers. I don't know the exact numbers. If there's been 3 whales hit in the last 5 years by boats 35 foot and bigger, maybe a barge or whatever's out there, then there's no science that says this is a reason we got to we got to stop everybody with a 35 plus boat. They got to pay the price for nothing because there's no science behind it. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, as often is the case, and then when you have that authority, that science behind it, then these things start to make sense. But if you don't have that, that's certainly the caution signs need to go up before we start, I think, legislating these things and putting laws on the book. And then furthermore, having the opportunity. Okay, so if this is a perceived issue or someone's saying it, let's suss this out and then have an opportunity. We have a lot of smart people in this country and in the world of academics and young people that are brilliantly minded that would love to study this stuff. And I think to your point, if we could bear this out and have peer-reviewed articles that people can refer to and have a body of research, we can all help each other out.
Yeah, I agree. There's so many sources today that we can get the answers we need before you throw a piece of legislation out there for to be voted on. And sometimes some of these things that pop up, that somebody may be in a state that doesn't even have anything to do. Every state, we got all 50 states on board with us now at the Congressional Sportsmen Foundation, but it may be, a senator or whoever that doesn't really understand the great outdoors will just send, okay, let's go with it. So it has to be deeper research done, I think, before anything's put out there to be voted on.
So what's interesting is, as you're talking, I'm having this thought, the other side of that coin is, it's not always like a doom and gloom scenario where a legislator is putting something that's going to put a restriction on our outdoor community. Sometimes we have some really motivated, enthusiastic folks that want to put very positive legislation forward, but don't have the understanding of what that entails. So, for instance, right to hunt and fish amendments in the state constitutions. While people want to gung-ho and get that done and get it done in one session, it takes a fair amount of educating our own community what that process is to bring something like that to fruition. And it's kind of a longer game. We just can't do this in one session.
Yeah, it's that's a great point. That I think that having the amount of time to look at all of these different things is critical. And I think there's so many pro bills that, like I said, 1,000 in the last 5 years that CSS have been involved with. But just think how many probably got bias, because we need to build the Congressional Sportsmen stronger and bigger in every state. Our statewide is so important, and you're in New Hampshire up in there, and you probably got a few states you're having to look after. And I just want to see this thing built to where we can stay in there and stop the bad bills and get the good bills passed.
And it's a great segue into one of the last couple of questions here as we wrap up. You started to allude to it earlier when you're talking, making it personal about your family and what your hopes and aspirations are for your own line and what you hope your great grandchildren are allowed to have. And kind of a big 40,000 foot picture in the next 10 to 20 years, what do you hope? What do you hope happens for our community?
Well, number one, I hope this country stays strong as it's always been for the last 200 and some years. That's my first hope for my grandchildren. I can't imagine what their lives will be if they're 30 now. What's it going to be like when they're 60? I look at you, what's this world going to be like with you got to live in when you're my age? And for the great-grandchildren, you just wonder what they're going to see. But in the next 10 to 20 years, I see a lot of the funding that groups like PETA and some of these groups like that have. That's going to be a big challenge, and we got to be able to be strong enough to fight them and stop them on a lot of the things they want to do. I just want to see when my great-grandchildren someday, what's happening in this country. We're building so fast, we're losing so many places to hunt and fish. I'd love to see it where we still got our forestries, places that we can go out, and these kids will always be able to go out and hunt. We got to protect our Second Amendment, number one. That has to be part of the future for our children and grandchildren. Without our Second Amendment, it's going to be difficult. We can't even protect our own homes and our own lives. So that's something that we all got to get behind and make sure that's number one, that we protect it. Number two, I think keeping enough of open land and areas for them, for everyone to be able to use and hunt 10 to 20 years from now is going to be a critical movement. If it's BLM land or forest land or whatever it can be that we can still hunt on. And there's a lot still left, but not like it was when I was coming up, for sure. Those are some of the challenges I see, but I hope that in the next 10 years that a lot of these things will still be safe and still be in hand for the next generations.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And then, not to end the interview on a kind of a somber note, so I want to kind of lighthearten this. Again, I referenced the beautiful space we're in. There's lots of great memories here by way of the beautiful taxidermy that surrounds us. Is there one memorable hunt that stands out to you, or is it even possible to do?
It's
kind of not a fair question.
That's a great question. I think as I look back, I've been fortunate to go all over the world, from Turkey to Mongolia to all over the world hunting. But I think back, and I think a couple of the most memorable hunts that I was on was when my grandson shot his first deer. He was 7 years old. And he says, I said, "What do you think?" He said, "I think I pooped in my pants." And then my other grandson, we went to Texas, and this is a great thing these are memories that I'll never forget. I can remember hunting all these different species and doing all I can. But my other grandson, Ty Dillon, the first one was Austin Dillon, my other grandson, Ty Dillon, I remember going to Texas and him buying his first hunting license and him standing there signing that hunting license. And I said, it made me proud to know that Texas can have youth that can go, you can take them hunting. And he got his license and signed it. I should have kept them. I don't know if he kept them. But then I look back at him. We're sitting in a blind in Texas, and there's some deer come out. I said, "What do you think, Ty? You want that deer?" He says, "I've shot a bigger one. Let's save it for someone else." So that's the kind of things that stand out in my hunting. I've took them both to Africa, Mexico, all over around hunting. But those are two that really, when they were really young kids getting out and going hunting, that I'll always remember their special moments.
That's fantastic. If you could just find a way to bottle that love, that all of it that you just talked about, and find a way and get that in the hands of new people, it would change them forever.
Oh, yeah. Mentorship is the biggest thing that we have to have today. in the outdoors and hunting and fishing and everything that we do is become a great mentor to someone. And if you're out there today and you're not a member of the sporting society, you need to join, because that's where we need the support today is for not only our big manufacturers and company that helps support CSF, but we need the individuals that understand what CSF is to support. So if you're not a sporting society member, go online, take a look, and join.
That's well said. Sir, thank you for having us in today. Thank you for your leadership. And, we're down here, so we're looking forward to a wonderful event this evening. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here, and take a tour of our museum. We have a wildlife conservation area up there. Take a look at it. You'll really enjoy.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, sir.
Again, thanks so much to Mr. Childress for having us in to his office, for giving us some time, especially on a very busy day. As you heard mentioned, our wine, wheels, and wildlife event was occurring that night when we're sitting there. So all hands on deck. All of our CSF, most of the staff was there at Childress Vineyards. Beautiful, beautiful facility, beautiful vineyard with all the grapes and the hill. Just a fantastic spot. And stepped away a little bit to have the opportunity to sit down with him and ask him some great questions. I really appreciated his candor, appreciated the answers that he had, and getting a little insight. Not every day folks get to sit down with that man, given all the things he has to do throughout a day. And again, it's valuable to hear his perspective, to hear his voice on some things. Certainly some of the lighthearted moments of the interview, I appreciated him talking about his very famous grandsons and giving the countings of some hunts there. That's fantastic. At the end of the day, and I say this all the time, hunting, fishing, and to another extent, recreational shooting, these are all equalizers. So, someone like me ends up being on the same level as someone like Mr. Childress. That's a fact. He may be able to go to different parts of the world for different pursuits because of his hard work throughout his life. But ultimately, we're out there pursuing different animals, different adventures. But he's got just as much of a chance of being successful as I do, as you do. You put us out there in a turkey hunt, man, you talk about the complete equalizer, right? So I always use turkey hunting as an example there. But hey, all walks of life. And that's what's fantastic about what we do in our community. And again, you hear about the lighthearted memories of, like I said, his very famous grandsons. They're just people. They were just kids at one point, pulling the trigger for the first time, having that first experience, and remembering their first deer, their first turkey, how that went down. And I can remember mine. I can remember my daughters. You can remember yours and your kids and your grandkids, most likely. You could be white collar to the moon. You could be just starting your life out, scraping every penny, living paycheck to paycheck. But if you're out there creating these memories, they are all very similar. Again, no matter what walk of life you're from. And, I keep saying it, it's the great equalizer. And moreover, that means most people have the opportunity to go do this stuff and should. Mr. Childress talked about mentorship in that same line of thinking and how important that is. I love that he said it. I love hearing it from someone in his leadership position with his experience. And you hear it all the time from certain groups, certain conservation groups, and they're not wrong. But I guess for me, it gives a little weight behind it when someone like him says mentorship. And if he can get out there and be a mentor, we can, as a community, we can all take somebody out, introduce somebody to this, be part of that cycle, that mentorship cycle. We talked about what the next 10 to 20 years, I hope it's still here. That starts with bringing more people into what we do. Anyway, I find it reminds me of my time in the military. Kind of anecdotal, but it's the same line of thinking. I worked for a couple of years in a special detail for a 4-star general who at the time when I worked for him, we had just been attacked, 9/11 occurred, and we're post the attacks. We're in war fighting mode, high ops tempo, but we were still expected to meet certain standards when it came to physical fitness, readiness, and as was a 4-star general, in their advanced age and their advanced experience. And this general, I happened to be in the same space when he was giving this talk to some colleagues and some other enlisted folks and junior officers in his office. And he says, he was getting ready to go to the gym. I mean, there's a point to this. And this 4-star looks at all of us and says, with my schedule, with all I got going on in the world, and mind you, this is Air Combat Command, so a lot of your fighters, a lot of the stuff going down range is coming right through here, and he's in charge of all of it at headquarters. He says, if I got all this to do and I can find an hour a day to get to the gym, so can you. That was kind of profound. I was like, oh yeah. I suppose if this guy who's holding it down and running a war, running contingency operations downrange, and then eventually on two fronts, I mean, yeah, I guess I can get to the gym for a time during my day. So there's the correlation, right? Likewise with Mr. Childress saying, he can do it. If he can get out there and do that, so can we all. I thought that was valuable. Again, just a great time. We ended up having a wonderful evening. So many great guests, so many people, I recognize, industry leaders, political leaders, had some great speakers. Sergeant Major Payne, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient for his time. It was an honor to meet him and render a salute as you do customarily when you put in front of a Medal of Honor recipient. He got up and spoke wonderfully about the outdoors and what that means to the veteran community and getting out into wild spaces. And man, we did a lot of good for the mission of CSF that evening. And again, a tip of the cap to my colleagues, to the Childress Vineyard staff, the other staff that came in to help, the folks that donated so generously to the event. Some wonderful opportunities, Mr. Childress included. Some race day packages were made available. People are going to have just an awesome time. These are unique opportunities that you're not going to find anywhere else. And I've been a part of some great many fundraising events and saw some really cool stuff. This particular evening, again, is just never to be seen, replicated kind of stuff. Like, these are once in a lifetime opportunities that people got to take advantage of, and while doing so, directly support our mission to continue what we're doing in the States, on the Beltway, Capitol Hill. Vitally important. It's so much fun. Just so much fun. Some folks being able to let their hair down a little bit and just kind of relax. And again, the great neutralizer, all of us having similar conversations about outdoor pursuits and what our goals and aspirations and what we want to see for the next decade or two, God willing. But just a fantastic time. And again, a beautiful backdrop there in North Carolina. It was just a great pleasure to be a part of that. So all told, one successful trip. Thanks again to our guest. Thank you to his staff for helping set that up, and inviting us literally into his home. It's just so wonderful. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the exclusive access we're able to bring you here on this program, because you're not going to hear conversations like that every day on other programs. They do a great job, but I'd like to think we do it a little better, and we're able to offer you, our audience, those behind-the-scene exclusive access conversations that, again, you're not going to hear anywhere else. And that's what we're doing with this project. That's what we're doing with this podcast, the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Share it, like I say, every time we get together, far and wide. Take this episode, grab a link from Apple or Spotify, and just text it to a friend or family member you think is going to appreciate this. This one, a race fan, hey, check this out. They're talking hunting with Richard Childress. Like, that's pretty cool, man. So you can do that. throw it up on a story. I mean, why not? That's easy. Everyone's got stuff on their stories. Throw it on there. Drop the link. Check out this cool episode of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for your support. There's a great many things you can do that cost you nothing but about 10 seconds of your time that on the back end of this, you're going to hear all about. So until next time, thanks so much. Appreciate your support. Be kind to each other. Be safe out there in those outdoor pursuits. We're getting to be in the thick of it. The rut is forthcoming if you're a whitetail hunter. We're in it. This is a great time of the year. So get home safe to your loved ones. See you next time. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.